What we've done today is put together a panel, and when I say we, I mean Wendy, has put together a panel of experts in social media to help us figure out, if we picture that chart that Chris put up a few minutes ago, going from the left side to the right side, sort of where are we today, and I guess most importantly, try to figure out what to do now that we're here. What the heck do we do with social media? So just as a first question, we can think about this social media problem in some sense at a few different levels. We can think of it at the execution level, and I imagine a lot of the questions we're going to hear are very much at the execution level. How do you do this? How do you do that? My question is at the strategy level, and if you could give us a little bit of insight into, I guess, in your organization, what is a social media strategy? How do you think about social media strategy? How do you create it? Is it part of your overall marketing strategy? Does it sit outside of that? Sort of what is it? And then could you speak a little bit to the relative balance across objectives in that strategy, the sort of the listening versus the promoting? How do you balance that within that strategy? So,
one of the things that David mentioned, his kind of acronym, and the one that I kind of make the people who work with me and for on this is like the word I like to use, and you guys, this is a good note, is shoe. And so everything we have to do has to kind of spell it, and it's going to be smart, honest, organic, and engaging. And I think that when you kind of have that as the lens you look through, I'll spell it one more time. So that's from speaking with David at a bunch of these things where you want to show the slide that has something cool to say, and you do the walled garden stuff. And so one of the things that's always important is that if what we're doing, if the strategy that people have, if they come in and say, we've hired an agency, and this will happen sometime where the actual brand marketing people will come in and say, we've hired an agency to tweet for us for this show, and here's their Excel spreadsheet with their tweets, and you look at them, and then you look at them and you say, well, how many characters? And they said they've got their thing, like they also told us how many characters they are. It's like 136. And you're like, well, you can't then retweet it, and you can't allow people to engage with it. Like they were they did all the math, they made it look really good, but you're not being organic to the space, and not allowing people to engage with it. And so it's like, that's the kind of stuff we look at. And so one of the things with David talked about is like a lot of things in marketing, and I'm sure it happens with USA Today, and I'm sure it happens in a lot of other media companies. You talk about an exclusive, like we're going to give you this article first, or you're going to be the first to know about this, or as a writer you get an exclusive on a piece of content. And so if we're Comedy Central and we give an exclusive to USA Today about something that may be happening, the most important thing we have to do is tell our audience that's what we want you to look. So it's like it may make sense to kind of drive traffic or drive a brand to another brand, but you're engaging your audience and you're giving them a reward. And so we kind of look at a lot of that type of stuff, and I think that's what a lot of the social media is about, because if you're just focusing on what you're supposed to be saying and not what people are saying about you, is kind of a big mistake.
I think my objective is really clear. It's to grow audience so I can make more money for the newspaper, just to kind of get that out of the way. And social is a really good way to grow audience. The newspaper audience is very different from an online audience. So I want to push people as much as possible to find these new audiences online. I have 3 rules that I like to kind of keep in mind, and these are also written down. Don't fail big. Don't set yourself up for failure by doing something that's so big and so cumbersome that you have no way of succeeding. You don't have the resources to back it up. It scares people when you fail big, and they won't try to experiment again. So it's this concept of small wins, kind of setting up small, tangible things that you can show your leadership. And that's what we've been building our social efforts off of. We went from having 1 reporter on Twitter at the Beijing Olympics to having every reporter who was at Vancouver with a smartphone and enabled Twitter accounts. Because one person had a small win, 40 people benefited. So that's something kind of important to think about. I also have this idea of square pegs. A lot of times people say, I want a Facebook page. I'm like, you're a security reporter, you don't want a Facebook page. And this happens a lot in DC. There's a lot of issues that we can't talk about in this area, so don't set up an account where you're going to talk about it. So don't square peg yourself and create something where you're just not going to be honest. H. Yeah, the H. And depending on your political leanings, this term might offend you or you might like it, but I tell everyone to socialize everything. So if you're doing an email newsletter, are there buttons attached, Twitter and Facebook? How can you socialize your website, your TV show, your check-in at your hotel, so that at the moment that someone's engaging with your brand, they've got an option to connect with you on that level. So those are kind of the strategy points I try to hit in everything we do. I had someone ask me the other day if I could set up an event for them so they could use social media at it. And I said, why not use social media at the events you already have planned? So it's just showing people that just because it's new doesn't mean it's different. You just have to add it as a layer to what you're already working on.
So what I'm hearing then is most of the examples you gave in the four of you gave in response was really on the promotion side, wasn't it, as opposed to listening? Is that fair to say, or am I missing part of your approach?
Well, I'll just, you have to listen. So I'll just talk about most of us as big advertisers are spending an awful lot more money now in paid search than ever before.
Okay.
And we all can think about the recent example of JetBlue this summer, just to put another case study in front of us, which is that for all of the $100 million that JetBlue spends on Google, trying to, enforce its paid search environment, one instance with a ticked off employee, a flight attendant who's going to take the emergency chute, now trumps on natural search and Google. That is the #1, feedback on that. So you think about instant, right? I mean, that happened within minutes, all of that effort. So
Right.
you do have to be listening and responding, because what does that then do to the hundreds of, or the $100 million you're spending every year on search?
Okay. Anybody else? Is listening secondary, or?
We kind of put the listening in the engaging part of the thing.
Okay.
When you say something, when you make a Facebook post, you don't just turn it off and you're done. You have to see what people say, and if they're negative, and it's, you look at the brands that I work with, and certainly, the first thing on a TV land is, why don't you just air Andy Griffith all day long? Well, that's your opinion, and there's other people who really love it, and so you have to listen, you have to kind of say people, or else when a show is a little bit longer because of it's a live show and you kind of ruin someone's DVR night. Like, to be there and to listen to them, and that's kind of stuff we happen every day, and that's what we consider engaging. And some of those conversations we may not want to make super public by, like, retweeting them or rating on the Facebook wall saying, you just set your DVR wrong. But there is a kind of, I think one of the great things about social media, when you look at a brand like Spike, it's got this big, guy, like silver, black, yellow logo. But when you actually talk to someone, it kind of puts a little bit of a face on it that never existed before. And I'm sure it's the same with USA Today and even with Marriott, in that as much as people have customer care centers and all this stuff, when you can talk to an individual and just tell them one little thing that they may or may not have ever known, or recognize them for saying something nice, it's a currency it endears people.
We're actually seeing a reduction in our email input. So people are choosing not to go to our feedback section of our website to give us feedback. They're now doing it on our Facebook wall and on Twitter. So listening's very important, but it's almost shifted outside of the marketing realm to fall into customer service.
Let me switch gears and ask one more question, then I want to hand it over to the audience and hear from you. In my business, or at least the part of my business, the teaching part of my business, there are sort of two different ways that we can deliver educational content, right? So we can stand up here and we can lecture and tell you what the right answers are, or particularly in management education and some other professional fields as well, we can foster a case discussion and get people talking and exchanging their ideas with each other. And it's sort of my observation that some of us are pretty good at one of them and not the other. And some of us are good at the other and not the other, but you get the point. Some of us are good at leading case discussions and getting people talking, and some people are better at lecturing. Some of us aren't good at either one, but that's a different issue. And there's sort of a metaphor there for marketing in some sense. So traditional marketing, you're standing up there through traditional media and you're telling people what the attributes of your brand might be, what might be good about your brand. In social media, you're trying to get people to talk and exchange information. And I'm curious, as you think about the migration of skills in your organization, as you go from the left-hand side of Chris's graph to the right-hand side, from traditional media world to this world of social media, how are you migrating, or how are you seeing the migration of skills occur in your organization? In other words, are you hoping everybody or helping everybody in your organization to come up to speed on social media? Or are you saying, you know what, some people are good at this thing and some people are good at the others, we need to just hire new people? So how is that playing out in your organizations?
I can speak to the fact that at a newspaper, the most dangerous person is, and I heard this term on a call once and I loved it, it's the the glossy-eyed techno-optimist. That's going to freak people out because there's no point of understanding. So in my job, I actually tone that down a little bit, and I don't tell them really how much time I spend online. And so that's kind of where you've got to start. You have to make sure that you're not overwhelming with that initial point of contact, and that it's someone who kind of understands it and build from there. And we've been able to do that by finding those digital natives that live within our newsroom, who are already kind of trusted people, know how to do the print-intensive work, and know how to do the online work, but also have a deep understanding. So it goes back to that idea of bringing people from IT, from editorial, from marketing, PR, building a central team, and then having that hub and spoke approach and pushing them back out into the real world.
And so by and large, they're from inside the organization. So you're finding these skills in your own organization.
It's such an organic process in how you build social into your culture that it's difficult to bring someone from outside in.